Hi everyone, in this video I'm just going to go over some of my thoughts about your discussion for paper number 3 and to introduce you to the module for the next paper. I scheduled another video for next week to go over the process of finding old newspapers on our library database. The syllabi is our roadmap for the class and I will need to update it as I see what needs to be done. So just be sure to check the syllabus every week and not rely entirely on Canvas alerts. I really enjoyed your discussion for the last paper. You had some really interesting insights about Josephine Goman's diary. Our class materials are a mix of old and new projects. Learning about Josephine Goman is a new project for me. So it's a bit unfair to hold up John Price's life against Goman's life since they had very different resources. Their respective genders might only tell part of the story. I should have included the fact that Goman was able to have a more regular college experience her last semester. She got a scholarship with help from the women's dean, and also she had some mentorship from a professor who's well known for his kindness. She had opportunity to write more for the Michigan Daily and had more balance in her life. We can also see that college, even in 1912, gave someone like Josephine Goman mobility. She needed college. She wanted college. It helped her get a job. She was a teacher after college, and she became a lifetime activist as well. So that's food for thought as well. I started responding to the papers, and I should be done with all of them by the end of the week. So I'm going to walk you through now the next module for paper number 3. We'll be looking at the activist methods of suffragist Alice Paul. We're using the movie Iron Jaw Angels somewhat as a flawed textbook. The movie can provide a visual for the sources that we're going to look at, such as newspapers. Some of you probably have seen the movie already, but I suggest you watch it again with new context. If you attended Professor Pam Pennock's lecture, or maybe you know this already, women's suffrage is a huge topic. Some of you might also be studying Susan B. Anthony's trial. So the suffrage movement went on for 70 years in many towns, cities, and states, and the passage of the 19th Amendment did not necessarily mean equality for all, as the vote was not secured for all marginalized groups. Also, as you know from our study of women at college, equality via the vote did not remedy sexist hierarchies. I like studying Alice Paul's work as a suffragist because I think that her work is a formula for activism that in some ways could be duplicated. Her work was modern in the sense that she relied on imagery and also media attention. So our focus will be on her rhetorical methods, which included using her body when she went on hunger strike and jail, and then using the press to be a witness. This unit is also a good opportunity to do light research using the primary sources we have accessible in our library database, which is pretty remarkable that the newspapers covered Alice Paul at all, because as you know from studying the flu, there was censorship in the press. So I'm going to walk you through the module now, and I sent you a note about how we can get Iron Jaw Angels from our library, and I couldn't get that link to work this morning, so I'm not going to fuss with it right now, but hopefully keep me posted on any struggles you might have as well. So here I'm going to walk you through the module. Hopefully it won't be too clunky getting there. Now this picture is, I think that is Alice Paul, and I like it because it almost looks like they're taking a picture of her, but I don't think so. Alice Paul and the National Women's Party, along with the other suffragists, also had specific colors that they use. I don't think PowerPoint really quite captures it, but they use gold and purple and white. So hopefully I can get our module up. And it went away. There it is. Yay. Okay. I made a rough guide, really rough guide for this paper because I think that you can access the citation info from context of these newspapers and articles. So I'm not going to open these in case it's slow, but you can see I made a very rough guide. Also, 2 optional sources I put up here was a link to Professor Pam Pennock's lecture that many of you already listened to. It's a great overview. This is another optional source, the book I Couldn't Write, about Alice Paul by historian Susan Ware. I like this article because it brings some context to why someone who produced a movie about Alice Paul might soften her. Alice Paul didn't leave papers about what she was really thinking, what was in her heart, maybe like a Goldman diary. So her biographers had to bring a little bit more context to make her life, quote unquote, more marketable. As an activist, maybe she was kind of a single-minded, maybe one-dimensional person. So Susan Ware gets at that, and if you're troubled by the movie or you're bothered by artistic license, it might bring a little bit of an insight to why someone might be inclined to do that when studying someone like Alice Paul. How the Vote Was Won, Iron Jaw Angels, is a piece I wrote. It was somewhat commissioned to answer the question, how true was Iron Jaw Angels? And this provides models about how to bring in the newspapers to an argument. Our main source we're going to be using is an article that I like by a scholar named Sally Graham. She also brings in a lot of the sources, such as the banners the suffragists use and also the newspaper articles, and really provides context for how censorship was and wasn't working for the suffragettes during this time, something that we touched on a little bit in an earlier unit when we studied the flu. So my suggestion, even though there's many avenues for writing the paper, is to dig into what was actually going on with these suffragettes, trying to figure out, what their constraints were. They were activists, but they also were communicators as well. So that's going to be our kind of working thesis, how these suffragettes manipulated their audiences, used their audiences to get what they wanted. The rest of the items in this module are example newspaper articles. So I'm going to encourage you to find your own newspaper articles, but these are kind of me doing your homework for you somewhat, as I've done so far. Talks of Feminism. This is an article that features a big rally about feminism amongst progressives of the day. You can Google some of the people talking. It's pretty interesting. You can see that suffrage didn't come out of nowhere, that people were already talking about equality, big names, but they were also kind of very progressive for their time. It wasn't mainstream. These were people who were considered radicals talking about feminism. The suffrage parade, New York Times coverage, this was a pivotal moment, I think, for the new suffragettes in gaining attention to their cause. There's some good quotable stuff in there. Helen Keller was at the parade, if you remember Helen Keller. The rest of the articles just give you an idea about how much coverage there was of the suffragettes, particularly Alice Paul. So it was kind of a mini reality show at the time. Maybe a source of entertainment, dare I say. The Suffragettes and Golf is from a British magazine, and this gives you some idea about how the British suffragettes in their methods differed from the American suffragettes. Alice Paul was a Quaker. She used so-called peaceful means to, I guess, persuade her audiences of her cause, even sacrificing her own health. The suffragettes in Britain were a little bit, quote unquote, more militant. So I guess in this case, they pillaged a couple golf courses, which did not make people happy, you can imagine. So Monday, I'm going to tune back in and I'm going to show you how to find newspaper articles in our database. What's kind of cool about using our database is that when you look up a newspaper article, there's links alongside of secondary sources if you want to pursue more sources about this topic, but that's not necessary. I'm not encouraging that 100%, but I'm also not discouraging you from making this paper your own. So in the short run, see about getting access to that library link to watch the movie and alert me of technical access problems. I'll be back on Monday.